Well, look, when things seem difficult at home, and let's face it, they are, it is sometimes difficult to focus on what also must command our attention, the China threat. We can't pretend that on the one hand China and on the other hand the China-Hong Kong calamity are not potentially damaging to us. We're now getting rhetoric from Canberra that we must not put all our eggs in the China basket. Wouldn't you think this was a classic case of shutting the gate after the horses bolted? I've argued for I don't know how long that that is precisely what we were doing at our own risk. Let me repeat the point to the point of boredom. No one is opposed to foreign investment, but we must be opposed to foreign ownership. Or do we let foreign money cherry-pick the best of Australia? Foreigners making a quid out of us and not much coming back to us. For example, the agricultural sector. Tasmania's Van Diemen's Land Company, Australia's oldest and largest dairy farming outfit. 25 dairy farms, 17,000 hectares, gone. Sold to the Chinese for $280 million. Scott Morrison was the treasurer. Isn't this a case of our own government threatening Australia's food security? China now fly plane loads of dairy product from Tasmania to China every week, from farms that were ours and now are theirs. So it's China that's making a big quid out of the massive Chinese middle-class retail market. That's a market from which Australians should be profiting. This is but one tiny example. You can email your own, I'm sure, but I've got pages and pages of this stuff. The Foreign Investment Review Board has been useless. Yes, the Morrison government have now made changes, but I'm sorry, the horse has bolted. Dairy farms, beef farms, avocado farms, water, minerals, the port of Darwin. They wanted a massive slice of our telecommunications, and they're propping up our Pacific Island neighbours with large dollops of money. And Daniel Andrews has signed up to this Belt and Road Initiative. It's appropriately named. It's China's road, not ours, and the belt will drag us along in their direction. And then last week, the announcement that Australia will spend $270 billion over the next 10 years building a larger military strike force. Look, let's not gild the lily here. This sort of military spend isn't designed to protect us from countries like Fiji or Tonga. It's to protect us from our so-called friend China, plain and simple. But China's military spend in 2018 was $175 billion US dollars. That's in 1 year. Where does our $270 billion over 10 years fit into all of that? Over a decade, we're not spending much more than China will spend in 1 year. This is the same China we allow to buy our farms, give them a 100-year lease on the port of Darwin and sell them vital resources like water and minerals. And yes, this is the same China that brought coronavirus into the world, originating in Wuhan. And now our economy's in a coma, along with the rest of the Western world. Do you think China won't seek to exploit our economic weakness? Look, it's no use beating around the bush on this stuff. What we see in Hong Kong is one of the biggest assaults on a liberal society since the Second World War. Since the transfer of Hong Kong's sovereignty from the UK to China in 1997, Hong Kongers have faced a depressing and hopeless countdown. Remember last year, in a city of 7 million people, millions took to the streets. They were peaceful. We saw them sitting at the airport, defiantly singing from Les Mis. Do you hear the people sing? Singing the songs of angry men? This is the music of a people who will not be slaves again. Well, police arrested over 8,000 people in those Hong Kong protests, a little place of 7 million. That's the equivalent of arresting nearly 27,000 people in Australia, almost double the paid membership of the Roosters Rugby League Club. How can citizens win against this ruthless force? Yet here we are facing protests by Marxist groups about so-called discrimination. Why not look at the Chinese treatment of the Falun Gong, who systematically disappear in their tens of thousands so their body parts can be traded on the black market? By the way, do you remember in 2014, the same President Xi addressed the Australian Parliament and spoke of the, quote, vast ocean of goodwill between China and Australia? Now the same China has imposed sweeping national security laws on Hong Kong. The idea of one country, two systems has been crushed. The new laws also allow dissidents to be whisked away to face courts in mainland China, and Chinese officials have not yet ruled out those convicted by mainland courts could be executed. It's appalling stuff. The first arrest under these new laws was on July 1. A man was merely carrying a banner calling for an independent Hong Kong. Why? Well, the security laws imposed by China now mean that someone can be arrested who uses unlawful means to undermine China's communist system. we've hitched our economic wagon to this lot. What now must be our response?